Hello, let's talk about Future Home of the Living God by Louise Erdrich, a 2017 literary dystopian novel with religious, feminist, and indigenous themes. I listened to this on audiobook, read by the author, which is often a treat and definitely is in this case. Erdrich does a really good job of reading her own work, giving it just that kick of emotion, but not over dramatizing the reading that can sometimes happen in audiobook narration. Louise Erdrich is the author of novels, poetry, children's fiction, with usually featuring, actually, I think always featuring Native American characters and settings, which is the case in this book. Erdrich herself is of mixed descent of German American and Anishinaabe. She won the Pulitzer Prize in 2021 for her novel The Night Watchman. So, this novel, yes, we're Cedar Hawk Rainstorm, who's been adopted by two white Buddhist Minnesotians, is in the form of letters to her unborn child. Uh, t- tells that child about her struggles under the theocracy that springs up when this cataclysmic non-evolutionary event happens. It seems that evolution has decided to reverse itself, and there's suddenly a fertility crisis, and society just goes completely in the toilet, and a theocracy, a religious government is set up and starts rounding up all the mothers, starting off with pregnant women, but then next is any women that might be able to get pregnant, any likely candidates, all done under sort of very much the ideology of we're doing this for your own good kind of thing. The novel starts off very much almost as a comedy. Like, if you went into this book not knowing at the beginning, you thought, oh, this is going to be some comedy because Cedar is pregnant. It's decided, I'm going to go discover my birth parents, and she's sort of bratty, spoiled, kind of not middle-aged, middle-class kid, culturally white in a way, who's expecting kind of the romantic natives, but what she finds are her family is pretty kind of humdrum. They run a gas station on the reserve. They're pretty much they've got their own own issues going on. They got some wonderful characters there. Um, there's also kind of like little hints at the beginning. It's like, oh, this is going to be kind of lightly satiric because there's a sightings of a new saint in the a new saint that's appeared to people at the casino, and one of the things that the saint is patron saint of is people who get made fun of for being too pious. So you're getting like little signals at the beginning. It's like, oh, this is going to be kind of lightly fun, and sort of the wacky characters that you meet, kind of quirky family members that you meet. It's like, oh, this is going to be light fun, and then no, we take very much, we go into this society is falling down. They're hunting down pregnant women. She has to isolate herself in her house for like months upon months, which this was written in, as I said, in 2017, but reading this in 2022, you definitely get flashbacks to our own lockdowns and isolations that have happened over the last while, and how that took a toll on us. And there weren't groups out there wanting to hunt me down and imprison me in hospitals to force me to give birth to children for their own nefarious religious organizations, for their own nefarious things. And indeed, that's, as we progress, that is what happens. Cedar ends up in a couple of institutions, and you very much get sort of this Handmaid's Tale kind of feel of this, of the people, the nurses, especially the nurses who run this organization, and the figurehead, whose name is Mother, are all these kind of shellac smiled people who really believe what they're doing is for your own good. Which, if you have any knowledge of the history of native peoples in North America and throughout various other peoples of the world, there were plenty of friendly government white people there saying, we're doing this for your own good, sending your children off to residential schools and shoving you onto reservations and controlling, and slowly driving you crazy. Yeah, there are. I went through a lot of this book going, Handmaid's Tale. So how does this differentiate itself from the Handmaid's Tale? Margaret Atwood's book uh, did a fairly definitive statement on the thing of kind of theocracies and their control over female bodies. This definitely comes at it from a perspective of indigenous people, of people of color. There, though, they're rounding, but also of pregnant women in general, and with the recent political developments in the United States and the threat for reproductive rights in the United States, you can see that this is still a very relevant and urgent question, and one that still seems to it's very much up to the question of like whether the rights that had been established earlier are going Roe versus Wade and stuff like that are actually going to be held. There's definitely, from my memories of Atwood's book, the religion the religion side of the equation was very much on the theocracy side, whereas in this book, Cedar is Catholic, and there is a lot of religious religious musings on her side of things, which is sort of an answering to the very kind of fixed, controlling religion of the this theocracy that's been set up. Instead, you have Cedar, who's got much more of a sort of a religion that is much more expansive, is much more open to possibilities. One of the possibilities being that some way the planet Earth has decided that human beings, that this process of evolution that we've gone through is one of these errors, and that it has to backtrack on. I have to say that the kind of the 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 start of this story, this whole thing of evolution reversing itself, seems to be it's the big leap. It's the big leap. It doesn't. I don't know if it particularly makes sense scientifically. Obviously, I have no clue of science, but it doesn't really make scientific sense. So it's definitely, it's almost like a fantastical element to start off the novel versus like a sci-fi element. But I'm not such a science fiction geek that I need it to make make it that part to make logical sense. It's just basically something horrible happened. Reproductive reproduction is now a scarce commodity, and this theocracy has taken over. Now, I could also see this very easily being some sort of a secular government could do the same thing, but of course, in our kind of the culture wars that we have going at the moment, there's a couple of sides, and very much the one side that wants to seem to control women's reproductive rights. It seems to be based in religion versus secularism. So, but you know, that is me. I'm babbling there. Um, you know, there's I think Erdrick's really excels in just the amazing characters that are in the thing, especially her birth family. Eddie, her her the partner of her birth mother, is writing a kind of a autobiography of despair, which is sort of, it's listing all the reasons why he's not going to kill himself today, which it's done comedically. It still is. Maybe why I'm so I so connect with Eddie is it's done comedically, but it's also, the just kind of a a horrible yawning despair of of generations of indigenous people. That's something endemic in the society due to what's happened to them under the colonialism of 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 white settlers into North America is resonant and but also still really darkly funny. There's Little Mary, the gothic Lolita, whose bedroom is literally sort of a level of hell with all the very just stacked with almost geological level of old clothes and food and just it's got this wonderful descriptor at the beginning, but Little Mary herself is just an amazing is an amazing character. There's a nun. There's the chilling portraits of the various nurses in these institutions, and you know how much a lot of them seem to either really buy into this ideology or really just get off on the power. The furtive people who are there who are trying to maybe help be allies in what's it's horrific um camp like camp like conditions, not summer camp but camps of kind of an extermination. And then there's Cedar herself, who yeah she kind of goes from being this disappointed middle class kid looking for kind of romantic forebears, kind of sweet that way, to at the end this weary, battered, gritty, hard won Madonna like figure. She's Cedar, but she finds out that her actual name is Mary, and you get there's definitely resonances of Mary, the Mother of God. The that title, the future home of the living God, apparently has references to the rapture and stuff like that. But there's also something there of Mary, of like there's Erdrich focuses on just the biology and the amazing miracle of birth, and how every child is sort of the birth of a new universe, is the birth of a new possibility. And that is amazing, and really kind of resonates out in this novel. If there's something that Atwood didn't focus on, it was this thing of child of a of that biological process, and how that is something that's so fundamental to being human. So something so fundamental that should be should be a woman's choice, but is 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 also just so mind-blowingly amazing in a way. And she captures that very kind of the tactileness of that. So yeah, and Erdrich, as usual, just the gorgeous kind of descriptions of the changing landscape as well. Is all there. At the end, the novel ends like all dystopian novels end, which is with a super big happy ending, because it's a dystopian novel. Nothing bad is going to happen at the end of a dystopian novel. I mean, look at 1984; that ended happy, didn't it? But yeah, it ends with a question mark, because that's, I think, something that a lot of people would look at how humankind is going today, and it's like there's a big question mark at the end of that, of like, what is going to happen next, and is there going to be a next? That sort of that bleakness, that she doesn't shy away from that. So this is very much unlike the other Louise Erdrich novels I've read. I've read Le Rose, which is just kind of contemporary fiction, and I think it was The Birch Bark House, which was more of historical, almost children's literature. She seems like it's an author who's got a lot of interest, a lot of she's taking on indigenous characters, indigenous themes, but she's exploring it from all these sort of different angles. I'm not that much of a fan of dystopian novels, but she's such a good writer that this really this really did pull me through. Even in this time, it's just not the time that I would have thought that I would want to read a dystopian novel, but in the hands of someone like Louise Erdrich, I'm happy to do that. So yeah, that is my review of Future Home of the Living God by Louise Erdrich. More videos later.